What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
A few general words, of course. In general terms, the inspection of a gasoline and diesel engine is not very different. You need to see that the engine does not bleed oil and antifreeze, that in the expansion tank antifreeze stood at the level, that the oil level was normal, that there were no extraneous sounds. But due to the absence of ignition system as such and peculiarities of fuel equipment, it is more difficult to estimate the residual life of a diesel. But it is easier to refuse it. It is enough to see only blue smoke, or black, or white smoke. The main feature of diesel cars is the mileage, which is usually higher than that of the same cars with gasoline engines. Diesel cars are almost always bought with the expectation of high mileage, otherwise their advantages do not have time to be fully realized. Accordingly, and on the secondary market with diesel you should be careful. They are very fond of twisting the mileage. Often such cars are bought by those who spend a lot of time on the highway, so it is difficult to estimate the mileage by the condition of the steering wheel, pedals and other twists and turns in the cabin. The best thing, of course, is to use a diagnostic scanner, and if you do not have it, at least buy reports on the internet, which are not lacking now. The cost of a mistake in determining the true mileage can be great. Frankly speaking, I don't know why many people still treat diesels with disdain. These are not the days when a diesel car resembled a rumbling, smelly truck. A modern diesel engine, more precisely, turbo diesel, atmospheric motors on heavy fuel and not produced for a long time, is quite comfortable, attractive, and economical. And in some cases, a diesel engine on some model is in principle better than a gasoline engine. For example, on many Peugeots and Citroëns, where the gasoline EP6 is the only available motor, and far from the best in all respects. And PSA's diesels are very good. Why not consider a diesel in this case? It is clear that residents of the northern regions often do not consider diesels because of the difficulties with winter starts, coupled with the frequent lack of normal winter fuel. That's fair enough. In some regions, gasoline will be better. But in general, for a modern diesel, the SAM East 25 degrees is not a problem. If, of course, this modern diesel is in good working order. So, what to look at? Let's start at the beginning. As I have already said, the first inspection starts exactly the same way as the inspection of a gasoline engine. But if most often in an atmospheric gasoline engine traces of oil can be found under the valve cover, leakage of the valve cover gasket is a very popular reason for bargaining, then in a diesel engine you should look for traces of turbine and pipe fogging. The main cause of increased oil consumption in a diesel is the turbine. Its repair usually costs a lot of money, even if you can replace the cartridge separately, so there can be no oil outside. Unfortunately, it is impossible to diagnose the turbine by eye. But after starting the engine, you can see that it requires repair. More about it below. For now, just look that oil does not ooze out of it. Another important detail of the turbine is its originality. If they sell a car with a mileage of 100,000, and instead of KKK or something similar there is a Chinese part, you need to check the truth of the mileage. Turbines don't usually fall apart that early. The best way to determine the condition of the turbine is to look at the exhaust. There is no point in gassing a cold engine. Unlike a gasoline engine, even a cold diesel engine has the right to smoke a little, even if it has a particulate filter. Therefore, warm up the car. Do not forget that in the case of a diesel it is better to do it on the move, and start manipulating the gas pedal. This is where you need a helper. The first time he should press the throttle and for a few seconds keep slightly higher revolutions, 2500 to 3000, which is a lot for any diesel engine. Smoke of any color, that's it, you can drive away. On a warmed-up diesel there can be no smoke at these revolutions at least for the first few seconds. To be more precise, it can, but it speaks at least about worn piston. If at this stage there is almost no smoke, you can go to the second stage. Press the gas pedal a few seconds harder so that the RPM rises at least to 4000. And look at the smoke. Strange as it may seem, the most harmless result is black smoke. It means that unburned fuel is flying out of the pipe. There can be many reasons for this, from holes in the pipes to current injectors and a dead turbine. If there is a desire, you can deal with this issue further, at least check the tightness of the intake. There are motors in which The classic cause of such smoke is a hole in the intercooler pipes, and it is not too expensive to repair. If there is no desire to start life with this car with repairs, it is better to look for another option. In general, there is one rule here: the sooner black smoke starts, the worse it is. If you then turn off the engine, start it again and see that the hot engine does not start immediately, then there is a high probability that it is the injectors that are malfunctioning, which are overfueling, and maybe also the fuel injector. In general, you need quality diagnostics. In an ideal situation, smoke after a few seconds of operation at speeds above 4,000 should not be. Blue smoke, this, as we know, is a sign of burning oil. That is, the set of problems here is somewhat different. Most likely, the turbine is defective, but it may well be that the engine has already lost compression. In any case, blue smoke is worse than black smoke, and eliminating the causes of its appearance is usually more expensive. Do not listen to those who say that the smoke appeared after some chipping. Yes, this can really happen if, for example, the supercharger is incorrectly set in the program, but it does not change the essence of the matter. There is a problem with the supercharger, and it will have to be eliminated. If, in addition to this blue smoke, the car is difficult to start cold, the reason is probably in the compression. Once again, check the truth of the mileage. By the way, if you are lucky enough to buy a car in the cold, not necessarily in sub-zero temperatures, the plugs usually turn on. At +8, be sure to look at the glow plug indicator on the dashboard. If the icon is not extinguished, there is a probability that some of the candles do not work, and it is desirable to find out about it before buying a car. However, if the plugs are not working, cold starting will be difficult and it will be noticeable. Just in case, you can pull out the oil dipstick and try to find some solard in the oil. If there is a problem with compression, read, with the rings, including oil rings, there will be in the oil pan and fuel. Of course, modern diesels go to pieces less often than old YAMZ ones, but it is more difficult to stop them. It is pointless to plug the air intake with a driver's sweatshirt. It is often impossible to stop such a diesel engine, especially on a car with automatic transmission. Mechanics have more chances. You can try to overload the engine with a high gear. In a word, diesel in the oil, it's very bad. Another good way to check the diesel is to drive your car behind the seller's car and look at the color of the smoke in different driving modes. And let's not forget about hearing. Everyone knows that a diesel engine works with a characteristic knock, but still this knocking should not bother you. Even injectors can knock well, and some of them, usually piezo injectors, are not repairable in principle and cost as half of the motor. Here it is desirable for reference to have a known serviceable diesel of the same model to listen to it first, and then compare. Family matters in materials about used diesel cars. We often say the phrase typical diesel problems. What do these family diesel problems refer to? The turbine, the fuel injectors, the injectors, and the environmental systems. In this list, it is the environmental systems that most often fail, of which there are more than enough in modern diesel cars. There's nothing wrong with a car with EGR is turned off. It is only important to understand how competently it is plugged. There can't be any plugs made from tin cans. This is a clear sign of a wrong and too cheap approach. Of course, there must be a plug, but it must be cut from thick metal. In addition, the EGR must be disabled programmatically. Often, instead of programmatically disabling it, they just erase the system diagnostic section, which is wrong in principle. But you can't see it with your eyes. Neither will you see it with a regular scanner. It will simply not show any errors. You have to read the firmware and pick through its files, which no one will do before buying the car, of course. This is bad, so you need to make sure that at least physically the EGR has been dealt with in a non-barbaric way. The same applies to the particulate filter, if it is factory fitted. Although here the situation is a bit different, it would be better to leave the particulate filter on the car. If EGR is silenced at least because it pollutes the intake, the particulate filter does not pollute anything. Another thing is that it is often removed in a complex way, together with EGR. I will not talk about whether it is good or bad, but I will note that if EGR in samples at idle speeds can be destroyed for 30,000 mileage, the particulate filter lives longer. Therefore, again we look at the mileage. If the seller convinces that the mileage of the car is 70,000 kilometers, and there is no particulate filter, there is a probability that the mileage is noticeably more. Well, or that the car has been serviced in some way, which is even worse. Another of the diesel's environmental systems is urea. Many people get rid of it to avoid buying reagent. In this case, 2 requires reflashing, so you need to look where it was done. If it was done in a garage, it is likely to be done crookedly, because it is quite difficult to remove urea programmatically. If the AdBlue system, aka SCR and all the rest, is installed on the car, you need to check how all its components work. Some things are obscenely expensive, so it is better to entrust the diagnostics to professionals. Even such a seemingly trifling thing as an error of urea tank heating on some Mercedes will require a 3-digit investment, so pickiness will not prevent. And if the heating does not work, but it is necessary to remember that urea solution freezes at T11 degrees, so you will be able to drive only in summer. More important than mileage, diesel is much more serious about maintenance than gasoline. A diesel car left from dealer service is often killed by economy in the form of rare replacement of fuel filter, which is much more expensive on diesel than on gasoline. And this kills both the fuel injector and the injectors. If in the history of repairs there is a repair of injectors, you need to find out what caused this record. Often injector repair is caused by wear of the fuel injector. Abrasion from the old pump kills the injectors, and in this case it would be good to know what's wrong with the fuel injector. It happens that the injectors are repaired, but they don't want to pay money for the repair of the fuel injector. In this case, the injectors die again and the car is drained. If any heater is installed, Webasto or any other, or a simple electric afterstart hairdryer, it must work. And at least some documents on the maintenance of the liquid heater should also be. In general, you should always remember, diesel is good only with very good service. If it has been serviced in a shoddy way, it can drink much more blood than diesel fuel. A well-maintained diesel can please. A neglected one will only piss you off, and at your considerable expense. In conclusion, understanding the signs of black smoke, blue smoke, vibrations, and knocking in a diesel engine is crucial for maintaining its performance and longevity. By regularly checking these indicators, you can identify potential issues early and take the necessary steps to address them. Remember, a well-maintained engine not only runs more efficiently but also saves you money in the long run. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more insights on keeping your diesel engine in top shape.